Hey guys, welcome back. Lucky Ghost here. Season 2 of Diablo 4 is finally upon us, and with it have come some amazing changes. But because of these changes, it's going to be incredibly easy to make some huge mistakes if you jump into the game and start playing it the same way you did before. So in this video, I'll warn you about the mistakes players are most likely to make due to the changes that have come with Season 2. Alright, the first mistake players are likely to make in Season 2 is neglecting their resistances. Resistances are now going to work entirely different than before. Resistances are going to actually reduce your damage taken from an element by the amount stated on your sheet. So if you have 50% fire resistance, you will negate 50% of the fire damage that is coming at your character. Plain and simple. Nothing else. No funny business. That's it. And if you find an item that adds another 20% resistances, your fire resistance will now just go up to 70%, which is the new soft cap. So you can get to 70% resist of any element just by getting items that have resistances to that element. Then there's going to be some sort of hard to find items that are going to allow you to take your max resistance all the way up to 85%. So resistances are going to be insanely important. Before, your armor was doing a lot of that work and you basically just ignored your resistances and just got tons of armor, and then your armor blocked a ton of elemental damage. No more. Now, if you have a ton of armor and you have no resistances, you are going to die. You are going to take a ton of fire damage. Your armor will no longer be blocking any elemental damage, and your elemental resistances will not block any physical damage, right? So there's a clear separation there. Necro and Sorcerer are going to have the easiest time completing their resistances, whereas other classes are going to have to actually try a little bit harder to fill out those resistances because your resistances scale with your intelligence. So intelligence heroes are passively going to have a ton of resistances, whereas dexterity and strength heroes are not. How is this all going to play out in Season 2? Well, we're going to find out. I expect that it's going to feel a lot more like Diablo 2 and a lot more like Path of Exile in terms of damage and damage mitigation, which in my opinion is a very good thing. The next mistake to avoid making is just assuming that you have to wait for the RNG gods to give you a really good item. No more are the days where you have to hope that your unique that you need to make your build viable is just going to drop into your lap. Those days are over. Now you can go and you can target farm certain bosses that were just added to the game and get the unique that your build needs. So if you need a Tempest Roar, then you can go kill Duriel and get yourself a Tempest Roar. It's not going to necessarily drop on the first time that you kill him, but you will have a specific boss in the game that you can go kill to target farm a unique that you're looking for. So this is definitely something that everyone's going to want to take advantage of. The 5 new bosses that they added, with Duriel being the hardest of the new bosses, but Duriel is still easier than Lilith. So if you're a more casual player, or if you're someone that never killed Lilith and you're thinking to yourself, man, I'm never going to kill these new Uber bosses because I never killed Lilith. Well, you're wrong for 2 reasons, okay? So the first is because these bosses are easier than Lilith. And the second is, and this is another huge mistake, is to assume that Lilith is still out of your reach. And that's because the developers have changed the way they look at Uber Lilith. Instead of making it so that Uber Lilith is only going to be defeated by people using glitched builds or people using builds that are dealing unintended forms of damage, which is basically what we had in Season 0 and in Season 1. Now they have scaled Uber Lilith's difficulty such that the average build is going to be able to take Uber Lilith down. So even if you're not playing that one super ultra meta build that is one-shotting everything in the game, you're still going to have a good chance of taking down Uber Lilith. And if you're not sure which bosses drop which uniques, don't worry, I got you covered. I'll put a link down in the description below to a guide that tells you exactly what boss to farm so that you can find the unique that you're looking for. While we're talking about an amazing game, let me tell you about another game you'll love. Albion Online, the sponsor of today's video. Albion Online is a free-to-play, award-winning sandbox MMORPG that you can play on Windows, Mac, iOS, and Android. The game is set in an open medieval fantasy world where almost every item in the game is player crafted. You'll explore the world, battle your enemies, conquer territories, and build a home. The creatures and the players you fight will drop the resources, weapons, and armor you need to gear out your character. There are 4 zones in the game: blue, yellow, red, and black. Blue and yellow zones are safe, but in the red and black zones, the creatures and the players you fight will drop the resources, weapons, and armor you need to gear out your character. In Albion Online's classless combat system, the weapons and armor you use define your skills, which means switching playstyles is as easy as switching gear. You can hone your character's skills by using those skills. Want to become better with a bow? use a bow to fight your enemies, and progress through the RPG-style skill tree called the Destiny board. Looking for a more relaxing activity? Swing by your private island off the coast of Albion to build and maintain a farm, including crops, animals, and buildings. The best weapons will require the rarest resources, requiring you to search far and wide, but watch out as your enemies will be looking for those resources too. In the latest update, Albion has added shapeshifter weapons, which will allow the wearer to transform back and forth between human and beings called shapes with different abilities. Albion has also added tracking, which gives players yet another reason to go out and explore the world. When the player finally tracks down their target, they can expect a good fight and great rewards. Whether you've tried Albion Online before or not, this new update makes right now the perfect time to jump in. Support my channel by clicking the link in the description below to play Albion Online for free right now. Thanks for listening. Now let's get back to the video. The next huge mistake to make is to avoid hell tides. Hell tides were always good because there was some crafting materials that you absolutely had to go spend some time getting, and that hasn't changed. But what they did do is they made hell tides even better so that you can spend theoretically more time doing them if there's something that you enjoy, because a lot of people really do enjoy hell tides. They have increased both the experience and the rewards for participating in hell tides, and they've also made it easier to see what chest drops what loot when you're participating in the hell tides. So all around, hell tides are just going to be a better experience for you, both in terms of their rewards, their experience, and their usability. Now, this isn't to say you only want to do hell tides, right? Because the next huge mistake that you might make is spending too much time in the open world. And what I mean by this is you are going to level so much faster than you did before. The amount of experience it takes to get to level 100 is about the same as the amount of time and experience it took to get to level 70 before. So if you're someone that made it to like 65, 70 in season 2, you would have made it in the same amount of time to level 100, right? That's their goal, is to compress this leveling process for the amount of time people are willing to comfortably play the game. And that way, when you start reaching the end of your desired playtime for the season, you can also start diving into those endgame bosses if you haven't already done them, right? It should all work really nice, but because you're going to be leveling so much faster, they've also increased the rate of XP that you're going to gain for your glyphs. And you're going to want all your glyphs to be at least level 15, right? That's where the glyph expands its radius and gets a lot more powerful than it is before 15. So because you're only getting 19% more experience on glyphs, it's going to be really interesting to see if our characters are hitting 100 well before our glyphs are maxed out. And that's just something we're going to have to be careful of. If you spend too much time participating in all this new great open world content that they've buffed, are our glyphs going to fall behind? We're going to have to wait and find out. This next mistake to make is one that most people are probably aware of by now, especially if they played in season 1 in the latter half of season 0, but you can teleport to dungeons, and better yet, when you teleport to dungeons, you teleport inside of them. Gone are the days where you have to teleport to the outside of the dungeon and then you teleport inside the dungeon. Now, when you're doing a nightmare dungeon, you teleport straight inside and you start blasting. And to add to that, they have greatly improved the efficiency of dungeons. They've increased mob density. They have improved the layouts, removed a lot of the dead ends that you would naturally run into based on the way it used to work. And they also removed a lot of the objectives you used to have to complete before you could go kill the boss. So it's going to be much more about going in the dungeon, defeating all the enemies, and defeating the boss, with a lot less of the chores to do along the way. And when there's events that happen inside the dungeon, it used to be that when you walked up to an event, that, you know, little NPC would start RPing and he would say something and he'd be talking for a while and then he'd be like, they're coming. And then finally, what felt like 3 minutes later, all the mobs would start spawning, and they would spawn slow, like 2 mobs would spawn, right? And then you'd wait 10 seconds and 4 mobs would spawn. If you were lucky, sometimes it'd be 2 more, right? They've fixed all that. So now the time for the event to start has decreased, the time between waves has decreased, and the time for the event to end has decreased. So everything that has to do with events inside of the dungeons has been improved greatly. So that whole experience inside the dungeon has been greatly streamlined. And to make your dungeon diving experience even better, and this applies to the entire game, you are no longer going to have to pick up bad items. You're not even going to see the bad items. They're going to automatically salvage so that the materials go straight into your bag so that you don't have to pick them up, look at them to verify they're bad, and then take them to a vendor to salvage or to sell them, right? All of those steps are gone, and you just get to keep on going and blasting. To make up for this, they have greatly increased the amount of gold you get from other sources in the game so that you're not missing out by not being able to sit there and sell rares in between every single run, which I am not going to miss, by the way. I'm so glad that they are greatly reducing the amount of clutter we have to deal with and greatly reducing the amount of time we have to spend in town between runs out in the game. To further help with this issue, they've also greatly reduced the cost of re-rolling your items. And so it used to be before that if you re-rolled an item one time, it was expensive but manageable, and if you re-rolled it a second time, you were breaking the bank, and the third time they were leaving with your house, right? So now they have greatly reduced the price to re-roll your items. So you should see that become a lot more affordable. So don't be afraid to re-roll items a second and a third time this time around. The next big mistake to make would be to, one, not play in the season, and two, not dive straight into the seasonal content once you get there. So when the season starts, I highly recommend that the first thing you do is pick up the quests in town and go start the seasonal quests so that you can start unlocking the powers that are coming with the season. There's major and minor ones, and in order to start finding and unlocking this system, you are going to have to do the associated quests to unlock it first. So the first thing you should do when you create your new character is go and dive into the seasonal quests. If you're wondering what the best thing to do after you've completed the quest is, you can go head to the Damelheim dungeon or the Dopamine dungeon and spend a lot of time blasting that over and over. Just go in, clear the first area, leave, reset the dungeon, go back in, right, and do this to your heart's content. You can also do the next thing I'm going to talk about, which is legions. Don't sleep on legions. Legions were always a really good way to level, one of the best forms of XP per minute in the entire game, especially in the mid game. You know, when you were first getting into each new world tier, it was great to go to the legions anytime they spawn to really give you a giant boost in XP upon completing them. And this is more true now than ever. Legions are even better, and legions have been buffed because they are now spawning every 25 minutes instead of 30. So they were already happening very frequently, and now they're happening even more frequently. The next huge mistake that you might make going into season 2 is stacking into crit damage and vuln damage again, like you did in season 0 and season 1, right? No longer are those multiplying against each other. They're changing them to be more additive in the way that they work. So neither vulnerable damage nor critical damage are going to be the OP forces that they used to be, which is going to hopefully enable a lot more build diversity in the game. And what they are doing is, because they know this is going to result in a lowering of player power in some regards, it's also going to make a lot of other builds come up in terms of their competitiveness with those types of builds, right? So more builds are going to be viable, and to make up for this, they are going to lower the strength of the enemies that we're fighting, right? Continuing to basically try to balance this game. So while I do wish the game had been better balanced at launch, I am also very sympathetic towards them trying to balance something with this many different moving parts. It's got to be a nightmare. Another mistake to avoid making is completely ignoring the Tree of Whispers. Now, this one's going to require a little bit of testing to see how much they buffed it, because all they said was, we have significantly increased the experience and the rewards from the Tree of Whispers. So what does significantly mean? That's what we're going to have to find out. Is it now going to be a much more viable way to level your character and to reward your character for their time spent in the game? Because for me in season 1, I almost completely ignored Tree of Whispers. It just didn't feel like a very compelling system to engage with beyond the absolute minimum that I had to. So now Tree of Whispers has been significantly buffed, so we'll see what that means. Definitely give it a try and see what you think. The next mistake to avoid making is missing out on those world bosses. So world bosses were one of those things where we tended to do them once in a while when they spawned, but they only spawned every 6 hours. So after we did them a few times, eventually we just kind of stopped showing up, because you might get one legendary, but if you were running high leveled nightmare dungeons, you would run and you would get one legendary every couple minutes. There was no reason to stop what you were doing and go kill a world boss. Well, what they have done is greatly increase the rewards for world bosses. So world bosses are going to be far more rewarding now, and they're going to spawn almost twice as often. Their respawn timer has been changed from 6 hours to 3.5 hours. So we're going to see them much more often and with much better rewards. So definitely take advantage of that. World bosses are always going to be a phenomenal way to help kit your character out once they reach a new world tier. The next huge mistake to avoid making is looking for items the way that you used to. So what I mean by that is they have now added a filter system. You can search with the search bar. So if you're looking for a certain stat, or if you're looking for a certain aspect, or if you're looking for anything, you can literally type that into the search bar in your inventory and find it. So if you're looking for fire resist, you can type fire, and all the items with fire in them will be highlighted, right? So it's going to be far easier. I don't know about you, but for me, one of my most tedious tasks in season 1 was looking for an aspect that I had stored, or a legendary item that I had stored in my inventory, and I had to hover over each item one at a time. Those those days are over. Thank goodness Blizzard has finally added search to our inventories in Diablo 4. Wish that one would have been here at the beginning, guys. So that's my advice. If you're someone that's thinking about jumping into Diablo Season 2, I'm going to have a lot more Diablo content coming out over the next couple of months. So definitely subscribe to the channel and like the video if you enjoyed it. Leave a comment down below and let me know what you're thinking about playing in Diablo Season 2. And if you've got any other advice for people coming back, be sure to leave it down in the comments below. A lot of times the best tips are in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, and a massive thank you to my YouTube channel members. If you want to become a channel member and support the channel and have your name appear at the end of these videos and get access to a private Discord channel and more, be sure to hit the join button below to check it out. If you're not sure what to do next, maybe check out one of the videos popping up on screen right now.